It's not getting it.
Welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Good. Now that you've received your invitation, join us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Tell a friend, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let's introduce today's panel. Of course, our returning champions, Chris O'Connor. He's co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media Production. Dave Elliott, we call him Big Dave. He's the owner of C&P Construction. Back from hiatus, Brian Massey, our own personal brain mass. He is the marketing analyst for True Media. A new person on the panel with us today, Chris Kipp. He is... Okay, I had you write this down. I should have written this down myself. What does this say, man?
Automation sales for a German company.
Okay. Now we'll take that. And of course, the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. And today on this show, we are going to be talking about shootings and beatings and briefings.
Wait.
Oh my.
I have one thing.
Okay.
As far as our cigars goes,
yes.
We usually don't talk about our drinks and our cigars.
Well, which we are actually going to get back to this season. And since you're interjecting, we'll start with you.
La Flor Dominica, top cigar, the Andalusian Bull. I've been talking about La Flor Dominica forever.
You have.
And they have some of the top brands in the last Cigar Aficionado, several of them.
Okay.
La Flor Dominica. Lito Gomez had no experience in the cigar business. Actually ran a failed jewelry business. Was from Spain. Came over to the Dominican Republic, started figuring something out about cigars, and now is one of the best guys.
Okay.
Here's to you, Lito.
All right.
Bring on the airbender.
So we will go to Chris Kipp. Oh, wait. What are you drinking? What are you drinking, Big Dave?
I am drinking some apple brandy today.
Okay. That's a new one. I don't think we've had an apple brandy on the panel before.
A little bit of winter warmth here.
All right. Chris.
I usually follow Dave's lead on the La Flor Dominica airbenders, but I'm doing a little lighter Oliva G tonight and a Guinness.
Okay. All right. And you know what? This may actually be the first official beer.
I think Ben's had one a time or two.
Ben has had some...
Okay, you're right. He has had a couple.
He will drink that Pilsner Urquell.
You are right.
It's a Czechoslovakian Pilsner.
It's been a long time though.
It has been. Chris O'Connor. What are we?
I honestly have no idea. Just like the label.
It's one of those Avos, but
that's the new Avo,
Yeah,
and it's a good smoke. It's a good smoke. That's a Robusto.
yeah, I have had
It's
one
very,
of those.
very pleasant.
It's
Almost like a habanero type leaf and smoke to it.
Yeah, I like it. Because I'm usually an Oliva guy, normally, but today I was like, switch it up.
Okay. And what are we drinking?
Well, I'm always drinking Rager.
I know.
So that's not even a question.
And of course, Rieger is one of our sponsors for our podcast. Thank you so much, Rieger. Normally I am also smoking, but I am getting over a thing, so I'm not smoking a cigar today, and I'm actually not very thrilled about it. But I am having a barrel-aged Manhattan, one of the house blends of the Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club.
And you're thrilled about that?
And I am very thrilled about that because, as our brain mass would know, we have tried to get Manhattans other places and have been disappointed. What are you drinking, by the way, sir?
Actually, Big Dave is sharing his apple brandy.
Okay, all right.
And then for seconds, I brought some Maker's Mark.
Okay, all right.
Mr. O'Connor,
And that's quite a nice flask.
You're a true gentleman.
That's quite a nice personalized flask, by the way. I have to say.
Thank you.
And more often than not, of course, when we're not announcing what we're drinking and smoking, the anonymous female has a drink, and when we are, she has H2O. Ladies.
I'm getting over being sick, so I'm not drinking anything.
No.
Well, you can go with his Maker's Mark or something, a little medicinal purposes only.
You obviously do not know me.
Yeah, I just want to say that ain't happening. So,
If you want to see it all over the table, sure.
there you go. All right, so as I was saying, shootings and beatings and briefings. Oh my! So first, before we get right into the topic, I've been seeing, and somebody else at the table may know better than I, but it seemed as if there were a lot of RIPs in 2016.
We did the list.
I mean, a lot of RIPs in 2016. And we had definitely mentioned quite a few of them, so I'm not going to go through the list, although I did print off a list. But there were a few names on here that I forgot about or didn't know passed away that I thought were at least worth mentioning because I thought the people at the table, at least most of the people at the table, would know some of these names. What were you about to say?
The only ones we missed, because they happened the day of the podcast, was Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds, which was two of the names I was going to bring up.
You know where I noticed how many there were is on Facebook when there was a live video feed of just like pictures of.
Oh yeah.
And I actually thought that was pretty cool.
But still,
doing that.
The Debbie Reynolds Carrie Fisher thing, that was kind of
Yeah.
That's one of them freaky things where you go, whoa.
Yeah, within a day of each other. Yeah,
Whoa.
that's crazy.
You know, you hear of old people have been married for years and years, and then one dies, and the next one dies 3 hours later.
The brother said
She wanted
that
to go.
She said, I want to be with her, and
Boom.
she went with her.
And she went with it. Sure did.
It's amazing you just tell yourself that and do it.
Well, so the story that they talked about was people do or can die of a broken heart. That's what they call it, broken heart syndrome.
Broken heart syndrome. Or maybe she was a Scientologist and she chose to
We're not going to go into that.
She chose to depart her body.
For any of you Scientologists out there.
Oh, but yeah, I know. We were looking at a thing on Scientology, and so L. Ron Hubbard, of course, died of a stroke. But the way they explained it to their parishioners is that he chose to depart this body so that he could go to the next level of research that you can't do tethered to this realm.
But what really happened was he died of a stroke.
Died of a stroke.
Was that the same choice he made to live up at Catalina Island in international waters to not pay taxes?
Exactly.
I remember that one too. A lot of good choices.
Come on now.
Exactly. Oh, so a couple of names I noticed. One was Tony Burton. For those of you who don't know him by name, he was Apollo Creed's trainer in Rocky. Yeah, so I was like, oh damn, I didn't know, I didn't know he passed this year.
Was it Duke? Wasn't that his name?
Yeah.
Because then he ended up being in all of it. He became
He trained Rocky's trainer.
And then
Exactly.
he even was in Creed, I think, wasn't he? I know he was in Rocky 5.
I think he was in
Rocky
Creed.
Balboa.
I think he was in Creed.
I know
Yeah.
he was.
I don't remember him being in Creed.
I don't.
I think it was Rocky.
Wasn't he in
Balboa.
Rocky 25 too?
I think so.
I don't think that ever got sent out.
I think it was in Rocky 25.
I think that went that.
Those Rocky movies.
And the other name that I thought to mention was and by name I'm fairly sure that nobody's going to know who I'm talking about, but William Christopher.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Finna say, I think a couple of people on the table, but anybody out there in podcast land who's ever watched MASH, he was the
Padre.
He was the Padre.
He was Padre
on MASH, and
After MASH.
And growing up, I actually did used to watch MASH and liked MASH a lot.
That's a good show.
So when I saw that he passed, I was like, oh wow! And he actually was the last person that passed in 2016. You know, he died right after Carrie Fisher.
Really?
Yeah, so I was just like, wow, that was just one of those
No,
things.
and we missed that because everybody was
Just talking about Carrie
obsessed
Fisher,
with
yeah.
A lot of people in podcasting and wouldn't know this. MASH was such an excellent show because they dealt with the sorrows and the difficulties of war, and then they were able to wrap the humor around that at times.
Exactly.
And so it was a very poignant sitcom. Maybe make you sit there and laugh your ass off. The next moment, it could almost broke a tear.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it was really an interesting
even better.
If you haven't
show.
seen the movie, it's based
The
on
movie's even better.
amazing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So he was in Rocky Balboa. That was his
Yeah,
last.
that was his last one. Okay.
I remember he was training him in that because he was talking about how old Rocky was.
Yeah, because he was not a young man in Rocky Balboa by a long shot. All right, so there obviously has been a couple of really tragic things happen in this past week. And as we do, I figured we'd get a drink, light a smoke, and talk about them. So first on the list is yet another shooting in Florida. So the shooting at the Florida airport is what I'm talking about. They got a gentleman named Esteban Santiago, young man too, 26. They got him and he was charged with that shooting rampage. If I'm not mistaken, it killed 5 people.
5 and wounded 8.
Yeah, and
And he was able to reload twice.
yeah, and,
You had 2
and
clips.
well, and was able.
Yeah, you had 2 clips and a pistol.
And was able to fly to Florida with his gun in his checked bag, got his checked bag, loaded the clip, and started unloading.
But he was part of the National Guard, though, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He
which
was.
I think that was. I think that's the
I
thing.
believe he was already discharged.
He was.
He was.
and
He'd walked into the
went-
local FBI office and said the government was controlling him and telling him to do things.
Well, see, and therein lies the problem because this young man was schizophrenic.
Yeah,
Well, they held
Absolutely.
him, but they held him for 4 days, and they had no reason to hold him long. They couldn't.
he hadn't
legally
done
hold him
anything
longer.
at that point.
I understand this, but it becomes a deeper problem with mental illness issues.
I
Is
agree.
that we do not take people and give them a long-term evaluation. We don't have institutions to take people
Well-
and put them in there for longer periods of time to make sure that they are stable. Because a person that is truly psychopathic like that can also talk their way out of it sometimes. But he went to the FBI office as a cry for help.
And he
was
went to
losing
the
it.
VA.
He
and
was
he
losing
went to the
it.
VA.
Yeah, he was
and
losing
they didn't
it.
do anything.
And they failed him.
Yeah,
They failed him.
Well, I'll.
Now here's the other problem with what happened. He had a gun, but he also was allowed to carry his ammo. And that's all he had in his bag, too. And you got somebody leaving
yeah.
Alaska on a one-way ticket,
On a
and all
one-way
he
ticket.
has in his bag is a gun. I'm pulling that individual in. We're going to have a
Well,
long talk.
supposedly
I'm going
they
to turn
check
around and
every
do some
bag.
background check on him.
Never happens.
All right, this does not.
Well, they
TSA is
checked
an
mine.
illusion of
It's
security.
it's such bullshit.
So
Look, my cousin that I talk about all the time on the show, he used to work for TSA. He ain't running, chasing, tackling down nobody, and I can guarantee you
What's
that.
sad about
he ain't no punk,
but
but that ain't gonna happen.
But the point is that you should be able to ship your gun on a plane. I have no problem with that. I've done it when I've gone hunting. Maybe you should ship your ammo ahead of yourself.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, you should have to be able to ship the ammo.
Or buy it where you're going.
A gun can't hurt a soul without the ammo in it. Gun cannot hurt a soul.
I actually kind of agree with
Without
that.
ammo.
I'm
with
reading
that
through
thought
this.
anyway. Just
There's
Maybe
Can't
you have
take
to-
ammo. Well, can't.
maybe you have to UPS yourself the ammo. You
And
can't.
I think he honestly is just shooting up a different place at that point.
True.
I mean, he clearly was going down there for one reason, and I don't think it was he hated the airport. I think
No, they
it
said
was
that they
just
had
he
no idea
randomly
why
picked
he
a spot.
chose Florida, other than he had like a stepbrother or something that lived there.
But why did he go shoot these people? Because once again, he was still crying for help. He wants to be locked up. He knows that he is toast. He knows that he is toast and he cannot function in society. So he figured out, this is how I'm going to get locked up forever because I'm crazy.
You know,
I really believe that this is what the young man did. It's very disturbing.
Yeah,
that
because he didn't
thought
shoot himself
this way.
afterwards. He laid down.
right, and that's what I was gonna say. The thing that surprised me when you see these is like they got him, and that never happens.
Yeah, they
Never.
usually kill 5 or 6 people and then themselves. Yeah, he shot, all these people and then laid down and put his hands behind his back.
Well, the
Yeah,
police
like,
never fired a single shot at him,
Which is
as far as I recall.
uncommon too.
Yeah.
So that's,
Well, and it's
Raise
really
your arm on the
sad
spot.
to me too that it says Anchorage police said it was not immediately clear if it was the same. They took a gun from him and gave it back to him.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's failures there.
I think TSA is
like any tragedy,
moisturizer.
there's
cosmetics.
usually-
Okay. Later in the
Yeah,
afternoon,
it's
police
about
in Alaska said they had returned a handgun to the Florida airport shooting suspect,
After 31
which
days.
was temporarily taken away from him when he underwent a mental evaluation late last year.
They couldn't hold it after 31 days.
yeah.
but when I
Like,
read
there's
that,
just so many red flags. Like, to me, at some point, I kind of agree that there's been 2 or 3 things that you've done. You went into an FBI, the Anchorage, airport took a gun from you, or police took a gun from you. Why wouldn't you be on some kind of check this shit out list? I mean, to me, that is a perfect person that you would put on a list of some sort.
And it was obviously had been to war.
Yeah.
He also did not get out with the honorable discharge. He got out with what's kind of an in-between discharge between dishonorable and honorable. Basically, it was a general discharge.
A general discharge with no fault.
So, there's so many red flags on this that this individual is going to lose it.
Tragedy occurs when there's multiple points of failure. Typically, right?
Yeah.
So there's multiple points of failure.
Well, the thing is, they've talked so much about.
I mean, I think in this country, you got to be able to put up with the good and the bad. He did not commit a felony. Do I think like he's crazy? Of course I do. But my God, he was never convicted of any felony of any kind, which would prevent you from having a gun. We already have that law in the books.
Yeah.
So you have to give people the benefit of the doubt, or otherwise you're going to run the reverse action of locking up all kinds of people who shouldn't be locked up.
It's
And
a
the number of
dicey
people
road.
who are on the do not fly list that didn't even do anything,
Yeah.
just had a similar name to somebody else,
Yeah.
is already a problem. It's just it's.
Well, here's another point too.
So we shouldn't have like Minority Report level like pre-crime.
Well,
At baggage claim, there's no security.
I'm not
Yeah.
You
saying
can walk right
that-
in the door at baggage claim and
Plain.
shoot people
Yeah,
up.
it's
Some
very
taxi
true.
driver could come in.
You can
This is
come right
very
off
true.
the curb and shoot people up.
Yep.
Very true.
Well, especially in our airport.
I mean, so I
Yeah,
agree.
especially
obviously,
at our airport.
This is
I mean,
terrible.
honestly-
But when I hear that read, I mean, they did check. Like, so they did go through some procedures.
Some
I mean,
procedures.
so
They
it's,
did.
Yeah, it's just a
Somehow
tragedy.
it failed.
I just get pissed because they take my bottled water every time, as if that's dangerous. But the gun,
But the gun was able to get through with the check bag. I'm like,
You know, it's kind of like let me drink a third of this, and if I don't drop dead, it's probably water.
it's probably water.
There was a guy who published a article that was in the New York Times about over 1,000 ways you can legally, with stuff that is TSA approved, bring down a plane.
It didn't happen today.
And it's insane. It's the illusion of security,
That's what I said.
and that's it.
I
It's a
travel
joke.
extensively for business.
Me too.
I'm there 3 times a month, and you just got to deal with it.
Well,
Yep.
the last time I went through, I told him, I said, I had my knee replaced and I just had shoulder surgery. I cannot lift my arm above my head. And full body search. Just full. I so much just wanted to drop trowel and big commando.
I said, go ahead.
There you go. There
what
it
you
is.
gotta
Look
do.
at it. I mean, I wear a Speedo anywhere, you know that, so why should I give a shit?
You just waiting, aren't you, Dave?
I am waiting.
He just
I
waiting.
am waiting.
He just wait. He's waiting on the day, podcasters, that they think he's old enough that they can just go, that's an old guy. And he can go, and just drop trowel in public.
I'm a little bit weird that way. It's more of a protest. It's a protest. And I ain't got nothing to show them, that's for damn sure.
I have a feeling you just fart and walk off.
So we had another, before we actually get to so that was the shootings, part of the shootings, beatings, and briefings. But I found that today, for those of you here at the table that maybe haven't had a chance to look on the news, there was another shooting in Florida. It says manhunt grips Orlando as police search for suspect in officer's shooting death. So this guy, where's his name? Because they actually did put his name out. Markeith Lloyd,
Career criminal.
who was a career criminal and was wanted. There was a reward out for him, 60 grand.
Hadn't he killed his ex-wife or somebody?
Yeah, he killed his ex-girlfriend a month ago.
He's accused of it.
Yeah, he was accused of killing her a month ago, and he was on the lam.
Probably a pretty good idea he did it.
And then
She didn't bring that up.
and then today,
Chris.
and then today, he killed.
She was pregnant. That's what did it.
13-year-old veteran female
Yeah.
police officer at Walmart.
Yeah.
He shot at
Yeah.
a sheriff, and then the second death was a police officer on a motorcycle.
Was a deputy. Yeah.
That got cut off,
He hit
and
the
they're
motorcycle, yeah.
since he was in the manhunt, they have to.
It said Lloyd had been arrested 20 times in Orange County since 1994. 20
So
times.
at a certain point, I'm definitely not a
3 strikes.
like a
and-
3 strikes person, but at a certain point, your punch card is full, don't you think?
I think it depends on your quality of at-bats. I'm okay with 3 strikes if you're playing in the big leagues.
Oh, well, yeah. Like if you shot somebody 3 times,
Yeah.
you should stay in.
I don't need
But
to
I'm
see
thinking even if it's like drug related or assaults or something like that, at 20, I think your punch card should be full. I'm
you
sorry.
are a scourge, total scourge to society at that point.
I mean,
There is no redeeming you. You have exhibited no points of redemption. So, goodbye.
I mean,
see you later.
like I say, I'm definitely.
You're going to get 3
generally-
squares in a crotch until you croak.
I'm generally not a throw people under the jail type of person, but when you hear somebody's been arrested 20 times, it does give me pause to go, maybe you should have held on to him after the 10th or 15th time. Like maybe you should have just held on to
Are
him.
you a death penalty dude or not really?
It depends.
It does depend. To tell you the truth, I am.
It's a case by case for me.
It really is case by case because
Well, it's like if you
I
ever-
think just like in A Time to Kill, you rape a little kid. Yeah, I'm done with you. I'm done. I don't care. I don't care about you redeeming. I don't care about you rehabilitating. If you kill old people, I don't care about you rehabilitating.
But
If you kill somebody similar height, similar age, similar weight, what happened? I at least then want to know what happened.
was it a crime of passion?
Right? Was it a crime of passion? Was it a him or me situation? Like I do want to know, but there are certain situations that I'm like, yeah, I don't care what your
You may have
story
just
is.
said 20 crimes of passion. I don't know.
I have.
You're gonna choke me.
How would this played out? My sword passed. I got into a Mexican standoff one time,
Yeah.
and the triggers never got pulled.
Okay. And you know what?
But
In that
if one of us
situation-
had pulled them,
Yeah. Somebody. Yeah.
that person's going to go to jail.
Yeah, at
And-
that point, I want to know what happened.
Yeah.
I want to know how in the hell did these 2 men get into a Mexican standoff? Because, and I actually do want to know something about the victim as well as the guy who did the shooting. so we can try to come to a proper sentence. Because yes, you did do a crime. There should be,
but time, but you know,
Yeah.
20 years, I should probably get out for something like that because I was just quicker on the draw.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I
But what
mean.
if somebody would let's take the individual that's had 7 DWIs.
Yeah.
I'm at a point with them too. I'm going, nah.
Well, you know what?
You're done. They pitch you in and let you out, and you're habitual.
At a certain,
Once you
you know
become
what? At a
habitual, it's time to go buy
at a
it.
certain point, I don't know. Like, okay, with the DUI situation, did you get caught driving drunk, or did you like kill a family in a minivan?
I don't,
Because
it
if
doesn't
you just
matter.
if you just got caught driving drunk, do we want to put you in jail because you're an habitual drinker, or do we just want to revoke your license? You never have the opportunity.
They will never stop drinking.
Well, and I guess
because they always get pulled
But the
over
problem
with the
is,
revoked
how
license.
many DUIs and vehicle deaths do you hear about people that had already lost their license and chose to drive anyway?
Well, yeah, and you should definitely go to jail for that. Like, I have no compunction with you going to jail if you've lost your license and you're now driving. Like, that's like, you already lost the right to drive. So you are breaking the law, and you hurt somebody or kill somebody. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So for me, I guess it really is case by case. But let's move forward. So that really does conclude the shootings section. And let's get to shootings and beatings. Now here's...
Shootings and beatings, or just beatings?
Well, it's shootings and beatings and briefings. Oh my! So now we're at the beatings.
This is sad.
Yeah.
Truly sad.
This is
Are you talking about this particular incident that we're going to talk about?
yes.
The Chicago kids.
So 4 teens are being held in connection with a Facebook Live torture video. Okay, first let me say, I could not bring myself to actually watch the video. I felt that for the show, I probably should, but it's probably for the same reason I don't watch torture movies. I can't bring myself to watch people be inhumane to people. Not for my entertainment, certainly. So I wound up not watching it. But you know, we were talking about this when they first started talking about it on the news, and it really, really saddened me in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. For a couple of reasons. One. It saddens me for the young man being tortured. Supposedly he had some kind of special needs or something of that nature, and so that was, probably how he wound up in the wrong place, at the wrong time in the first place. And apparently this started off as them just being assholes and kind of picking on the kid, and then it turned into kind of slap boxing, and for whatever reason it escalated to the point of actually dragging a kid off and torturing him.
Wasn't there some conversations between the teens and the mom in regards to money or
They
something
were
like that?
sending her pictures and
Yes.
stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So what I wrote down here was first, what is wrong with these damn kids? Second, what do we need to do? And third is, how did we fail them to the point that they've become a mob that kidnaps and tortures a kid? Because what they kept saying during the video I fuck Donald Trump, fuck white people, gang, 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 which is hilarious because gang, gang is really just a new kind of term for like my crew, like gang, gang. Which so like me like you know like if somebody came up here and started talking shit to this table, one of us could jump up and be like, hey, you ain't fucking with my crew, gang, gang, because you're not. That's all that really means. So I'm not naive to think that these kids probably weren't in some gang or something of that nature, but it
Actually, they weren't.
yeah, and that's
For the
what I'm
most
saying.
part, it appears.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like it the more I read, the more it just made me sad.
Where'd it happen in the city? You know.
It was
The west side
It
of
was on the
Chicago.
west side somewhere. Which, sorry, Chicago. They call it the Wild Wild West Side for a reason. I've actually had a white friend of mine get off the bus on the wrong block and catch an ass whooping and got his laptop stolen on the west side. You know, the west side is wild. And we used to call it Beirut because it was just wild.
I don't think it's just these kids.
No,
I
don't
think
think
the
it's
difference
just
in
these
this, and I mean, you look at, I don't remember how many years ago, if it was last year or a couple of years ago, when they were talking about the Slender Man stuff. You know, they didn't have Facebook Live then.
No.
You know, I mean, 3 girls went out, and 2 of them decided to try to stab their other friend to death. They were 10 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just this.
No,
It's an
and I guess
escalating issue because now it's kind of like what we talk about. It's immediate gratification of being able to do something. I'm showing you that I'm doing this live.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, before it was, we're just going to take pictures and post it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, it's just, I don't think the issues have changed. It's absolutely horrible.
the immediacy.
That not only did you do this live, but you did it to somebody that couldn't fight back.
Exactly.
Not because of a mental illness. They had him bound and gagged.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, the mental illness makes it worse.
Absolutely.
But he was bound and gagged. It would have been the same situation for somebody that wasn't mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I think
You know, go ahead, Brian.
I think that's the point. I mean, I think it's more of a power situation where there's been so much going on recently, and I think a lot of people feel powerless right now. Just like they can't do anything about a situation that they feel passionate, you know, and one thing leads to the next, and then suddenly they get a little taste. Not saying like, oh, I got a taste of power, go crazy, but it just kind of one thing falls to the next very quickly, and then it becomes almost a human instinct to, for the first time, maybe they have control of something, and it turned out really bad.
Yeah, it's you know, every time I hear of one of these stories, whether it's, you know, if it was a group of white kids doing the same thing to a black kid, it would make me equally as sad, because it makes me wonder. Excuse me. It makes me wonder where the
humanity has been lost.
Exactly.
This is a negative humanity.
Exactly.
And where did your humanity go? How did you come to a point where you lost that humanity and became animal?
Well, they were 18. I mean...
Well, their brains aren't fully developed.
They're not, but at the same time, you've been through enough to know that was wrong. You're not a little kid anymore.
No?
I mean, you're...
But you tend to do your stupidest shit when you're 18.
Well, my stupidest shit did not involve
Well, no.
beating the crap out of somebody.
No. But you tend to do your most stupid things when you're around that age. You have not achieved that true cognitive thought yet to where you go.
No full frontal lobe
Yeah.
development yet.
Yeah, they're still not there by a stretch of imagination. For some reason, they thought it was cool. I think you got to blame it on social media. I tried to think back on some things that what would be similar to this that we had seen back in our day. of anything like this. The Rodney King riots kind of came to mind. A little bit different deal. Rodney King was beat similarly by police. Rodney King was no saint. This kid had no fighting, no dog in the fight at all. He hadn't done anything to anybody, to our knowledge. And then the other one was, remember the truck driver that got pulled out of his truck and they came up and hit him with bricks and beat him.
And stepped on his neck.
And everything else. So, you know, those were the really, I was trying to think back and say, what do we have in society that compared to this?
Well, there were incidents in Ferguson that happened like that. Innocent people, innocent bystanders that happened to be caught up in a particular moment of rioting. And, you know, it's sad that you don't recognize you're going about everything the wrong way. I mean, fuck Trump and fuck white people. So you pick the most helpless person you can find to tell that message.
Yeah, to make your statement versus a protest on the street or.
Well, back in Ferguson, a lot of these people were gawkers. They were there to gawk, and I'm sorry, you put yourself in a dangerous situation. Something dangerous might happen to you.
That's true, but there were. I mean, Ferguson is a monster all on its own, and it could be a whole podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's back to your point. How did we fail them?
Because I always think when it's kids, and yes, legally 18, you know, you can go off to war. You're an adult, quote unquote. You know, I have a daughter that's 25. You know, I know that I'm female, has a son that's 22. We remember our kids at 18. They were kids.
And my son was in the Marines at 18.
Yeah,
so.
but he was a kid that went off to join the Marines. He went, and to tell you the truth, I mean, he's home now, and he's a young man technically, but he's a kid. You know, he's a kid. He's trying to find his way, and it makes me wonder. You know, the generation of parents that are probably all now in our 40s and early 50s that are raising these kids.
But I think that's what it is. I think that it's like, okay, so when I went home,
or failing to raise them.
When I went home for the holidays, it was my family back home, small town, has their own political views, which I'm sure small town Kansas people can guess what that is. And that was clearly passed on to their kids, which are ages 6 and 9. And the reason I know that is because some of the things they were shouting out, which weren't that bad, like but they're saying, you know, who'd you vote for? And a lot of it was like Trump stuff, and the kids were actually saying Hillary, which honestly, those politics really aren't a place for kids, in my opinion. So, regardless of what they feel. But to me, it's like, my family, like, they're educated. Like, how did that happen? Like, how have you not thought about the things that you consider or that you have conversations about at home, like, and how they affect your kids? Because clearly, the kids didn't just bring this up out of nowhere. Like, they're going to mimic their parents.
Or what their parents are allowing on television.
Which, that's very true. And it's one of those things where you have to be aware of, don't you want your child to grow up and, like, be a critical thinker instead of...
Well, what about this? What about this? It'd be interesting to see. Did those kids come from single mothers, no fathers? One of the girls already had 2 babies. So...
again, that makes it even worse in my eyes. I was more furious about the girls than I was about the boys. And I know that's completely wrong to feel that way. But especially when you have children, how do you even justify hurting another person?
What if one of your children ended up in the same situation as that young man?
Oh, I would be in jail.
How would you deal with that? You know, are you going to beat your child because he or she is limited in their intellectual abilities, or they have a mental disease? Really?
Yeah.
You know, you
So that I mean,
let me bring up one more thing. I'm a Christian man. I'm a very spiritual man. I don't go to church a lot, but I am a very spiritual man. And I wonder if these kids have had that base. For a lot of black families, they do. They're very serious about their religion, but there's also a lot, black and white, it doesn't really matter.
But I will say
that lack a little bit of that spiritual base, that right and wrong, those teachings that you receive, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or anybody else, you receive right teachings from the book.
Yeah, I will say that this is probably the first, and to tell you, we, being anybody around my age, around in their 40s, we, and definitely our kids, if not us, were probably the first generation of black families that weren't almost monolithically raised in the church. I was, but these younger people that I know now, their parents, being like I said, being my peers, did not have them in church in the same way we were in church, and that does. I do think of that about that. Like, is there a spiritual vacuum? Is there
a spiritual vacuum,
a moral gap,
and the moral background that goes with being spiritual? The one thing about being raised in a church is that you are taught lessons. I mean, let's get down to what the Bible is. That's why I don't know anything about the Quran. But the Bible is full of very good fables and tales about right and wrong and what is done when people go wrong and how they fail and how they're resurrected, and it is,
I want to hear.
in a lot of ways, it's the Word of God too,
The
but
Quran
it's also more than anything, it's a
teaches the
history.
same thing.
It's a history book of right and wrong in a lot of ways.
And the Quran teaches peace. It doesn't teach violence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a peaceful book, just like,
some
well, I say
That's what we're
just
saying.
like the
Faith-based
Bible,
morality.
but I mean, yes,
Right.
Faith-based morality.
they are very much the same as the Bible is, at least where that's concerned.
I would think it would be. I couldn't see it being any other way. But we had those stories. We went to Sunday school when we were kids, and we were taught these good things about life and how to treat each other and how to look upon our neighbors.
Basic
how to look upon
respect for human life.
But the thing is, like, I didn't. My dad had to go to Catholic school. They were Catholic. He hated it. So he would literally have us hide from the church bus that would come by and honk its horn and be like, "You want to come to Sunday school?" He would be like, "Get down, hide." Like, he did not want us to go to church. So I didn't grow up with that, and I am.
Was that a Catholic thing? Excuse me. Okay, so
a Baptist thing.
So the church bus going around.
It was Baptist. It was a Baptist
So
church.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, were they going around to members of the church or just to the neighborhood?
It would have had to have been to the
neighborhood.
neighborhood. Like, we went with somebody on a Sunday
recruiting.
as a guest, and so they knew where we lived. And honk honk, nope, we were not allowed to go. Like, we had to beg my dad to go to church. And by no means was he like this horrible heathen person, but he did not.
He did not do well in
We
Catholic
did not
school.
have a religious or spiritual upbringing by any means.
My wife
My
did
brother
not.
is now a pastor,
Yeah.
and I mean, I feel like I'm a fairly decent person. I'm not one to hurt people or,
But except Mario.
Mario's over here. I don't know, maybe she's sketchy.
Well, my wife had a similar thing. I mean, she was sent to Catholic school, and she's in first grade. She got bored. She left the class. She was always in trouble, and it just never has. She definitely has a Catholic upbringing. She went to a Catholic college and got her degree, and all this. But she's kind of funny about that. And it's kind of been. I don't push her one way or the other, but it's something that she's not fully all in right now still because of the upbringing she had being a Catholic.
Well,
She had issues with it. But my wife, is not one of she doesn't let go of things and put things away like I do.
You've been quiet, O'Connor.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I just think I do not think this is an increase in violence. I think this is an increase in reporting on violence.
Everything's under the microscope.
Ability now. I feel like this country has done horrific things for 300 years, and they've done great things for 300 years. I think now we just hear more about horrible things because it's available and it's out there. Everybody knows I'm not religious and not spiritual in any way, but I feel like there's an inherent just level of humanity that at some point when you're violating that basic level of humanity, and the fact that you would bind, torture, and gag a kid with special needs. I don't care if you're religious or not. I don't care if you've ever seen a church, for God's sakes. You know that is a violation of everything that is sanctimonious in this country and in the world, to be perfectly honest. And I would say this. I find religion to be a book on how to get along with other people with a whole ton of other rules imposed that just seem abstract to me. And normally when people get out of religions, it's not because they're not good people or they don't have a moral standing. It's because the rules just become arbitrary and dumb, and you just pick different rules. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a Catholic.
Each person has their own way to be able to deal with that. But I know you as a good person.
I
know a lot of people that aren't religious as good people.
Sure.
And my friends, I trust them.
Because I know
that they believe in a positive humanity.
Yeah, I believe in an objective moral right and wrong. I always have. I think that morality exists whether you go to church or not, and I think most people instinctively know how to get along with other people, and I think
I only go to church a couple times a year. It has nothing to do with my spirituality.
And I don't want to devolve this into a religious conversation by any stretch. What I think is just, it's more of a human conversation of, I don't know how you get to the point where you set aside just your base level humanity to do this to somebody else. That part I don't understand. And the fact that they're 18 is troubling to me because they did know. They knew instinctively they were doing what's
they knew it was wrong, right?
But also, you are right. They're dumbass kids, So, do you give them the death penalty? Do you leave them in jail for the rest of their life? Is there any chance that they're ever not dumbass kids? I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
But we still learn something from our parents. And we've had this talk, and we all had something that our fathers and our mothers and our families brought to us. And that's the part of raising your child, not just having children. Now, Mr. Brainmass over here, we got interrupted. You had something to say.
His wheels been turning quite a while on this subject. I've been watching him.
Now, his wheels may have gone way past what he was going to say already, but...
No, I agree with Chris on that. I think that... my opinion on the Bible really is the same. I think that it's a set of stories that really help kind of explain this is how to be a good person, and there's a lot of rules that are added to that, but it's become not a universal entirely, but obviously a lot of people know about it, and it's an easy tool to use to say, here's how you become a good person. But if we bring it all the way back to your question, is where do we go wrong? I think it just happens generation after generation of, one doesn't teach their kids maybe a certain way, or that and then it just keeps happening, and then if you don't know what you don't know, and if that's all you've always been around, and I'm not saying that's an excuse to go act this way, but I think without having that baseline, and then being put in a situation where, again, it comes back to, I think, a power play where you feel helpless, and then somehow this situation became perfect, the stars aligned, and then they felt empowered to do something, and it escalated.
I think that is how almost all really bad crimes happen. And I will say the dude who shot up the Florida airport may be a different case, but I will say, just from personal experience, there were two kids who tried to break into my car one night, and it almost ended up with one of them being shot in the head trying to break into my house. So it started off very small, and it grew very, very, very quickly into what would have been a very nasty situation where I was willing to kill him. I'm like, if you don't get the fuck out of my garage right now, I'll shoot you in the head. You know, because I got a wife here, and you know, I knew it was a neighbor kid, and I'm like, I'm gonna let you know now, you are never gonna come near my fucking house. Yes, I have a gun, and she knows how to use it too, and she will shoot your ass probably better than I will, and that's just where we're gonna leave it. You know, so you make a statement pretty quick, but it could have gone really south.
Yeah,
So,
you know, it's just interesting to me, you know, because I don't want the statement that it's just sad to let them off the hook. What they did was indefensible and morally reprehensible, and really whatever book gets thrown at them, hey, you did this one to yourself. But it makes me sad that there is a generation falling through the cracks, and I just don't 100% know how we're failing them.
I think that's a broad statement.
Well, and I put it like, and I'll say this: I know personally people who have kids, and they are hardworking, good folk, you know, moral compass all the way straight, and have tried to put their kids on their straight and narrow moral compass, and their kids just want to be assholes. They just want to be, and they get in more trouble than you can shake a stick at. Not because their parents haven't tried to raise them, but because they want to do it. They want to do it, and okay, like growing up,
That's one of my life fears.
Yeah,
a kid that's just an asshole.
Just an asshole. Just he really wants to be. You know. Okay, so growing up,
I mean, I admit it.
I was a hairball.
I think this is the problem that I have. Like growing up, let's say you take this kid and who's done something horrible, and do they ever not to conflate you or your story with these kids, but do they ever grow up to be a Dave Elliott or a Chris O'Connor? You know, who grew up, who got through the knucklehead stage,
but because
to get where they're at.
You take your friends, if they have raised them and gave them some basic stuff, which I think Chris and I can both go back with that. We had some hard ass shit, but they still gave us some basic stuff that we needed.
Sure.
That got us when we come out of the bad part of ourselves.
Right.
We went ding, little light come on. They go,
and you never did anything you couldn't come back from.
We never
just didn't get caught.
Yeah.
We never really let go of the
now, you know what? I get that. I get that.
We didn't let go of the bottom rung.
I get that.
I think more than anything, that's it. We still had our hand on the bottom rung. In my opinion, you let go of the bottom rung, your chance.
Even if you were torturing somebody, you weren't dumb enough to then go and post it live on Facebook and say, "Hey, entire fucking world, look what I'm doing right now."
We left that guy.
Like I think that's where
stupidity and arrogance are a dangerous combination for social media, right?
Yeah, you go.
He got left in the bar parking lot. That's where
And thank God there weren't camera phones for a lot of incidents.
I've been in jail many times.
I know I've done some dumb shit.
But you know,
but come on.
My daughter is 17. And she has told me, I'm so glad that you have rules and that, you know, I don't always like it. We don't always get along. We don't always agree with it. But she's like, so many of her friends are pregnant or have had abortions or they do, you know, drugs or they just go out and party. They have no aspiration in their life to do anything than what they're doing now. And she's just like... So it's not a whole generational thing. It truly does come back to, you know, teaching your children right from wrong.
Yeah.
And you may not know what they're doing. I don't always know what she's out doing, but the thing is, when you have a moment and you see it's a teaching moment, teach them.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be them doing something wrong. If you read the newspaper, look at the, television, whatever, have a conversation. That's where we're failing. We are not talking to each other.
Availability. If it's a single parent,
Yeah.
there's never enough time,
Yeah.
You can have a 10-minute conversation with your kids.
But is that how you
it
were
doesn't
brought up?
have to be.
Ryan,
I'm not saying you can't.
No, it wasn't
Chris
how
has
I was
gone
brought
through
up.
this.
My parents didn't talk to me about anything. And I couldn't tell you to this day what some of their views are on certain topics. Because they won't talk about it, or they don't talk about it, because that's how they were raised. They were raised in the 50s when you didn't talk about anything. It didn't matter what it was.
Everything was repressed.
Your parents didn't talk to you about shit.
especially sex.
So and it wasn't that they just didn't know to do that,
It's just not the way it was done.
So for me, I didn't want to raise my children that way. So you either raise your kids the way you were raised, or you raise them opposite.
But that was a generation of children should be seen and not heard.
It was. It definitely was.
We were somewhat
Which is
part of that
partially why
generation.
my parents would be like, go play. These are your boundaries. And as long as you're home when the street light comes on in the yard, you're good.
That would have made the holidays less stressful for.
What's that?
That would have made the holidays less stressful.
Yes.
I think we paint and really tend to paint very broad strokes, and we talk about generations as if I think they get caught up in lore, and things that we think are true about generations are not necessarily accurate, as it turns out. And I think it's like I remember a lot of cool stuff from when I was a kid, and I remember a lot of dumb stuff when I was a kid. I don't remember the day-to-day as a kid, because those things didn't stick with me. I remember the really good and the really bad. I think that's what happens with generations, and then they get labeled with, that was a repressive generation. This was in the 60s was a hippie generation. Well, no, really, the 60s wasn't a hippie generation for a large part of it. I mean, it was pretty buttoned up in a lot of ways.
And
the 20s is actually way crazier than any generation we've ever had.
Yes.
So,
and overall, I agree with you. But just talking to all my aunts and uncles and my cousins that are that age, that were born in the early 50s and raised at that time, they really did not talk about anything.
My parents did. I mean, my parents talked to them too. That's what I think is very, very hard to say. Is it generational or broad?
Well, and that's why I said I don't think it's generational. I think it really does come back to how you raise your children.
Yeah.
It really does.
I think there's a large part of society that comes into play too. I think Lily was right when she said it takes a village, and I think that there's not a one-size-fits-all parenting solution that just works for kids.
Oh, no.
Now,
Well, I will say
I
this.
come
Now-
from it takes a village, but nowadays people are like, keep your fucking hands off of my kids, or don't parent my children, I'll parent my children. Then parent your fucking children. If you don't want somebody else disciplining them, and disciplining, I mean not touching them, but just saying don't do that, it's wrong. There are a lot of people that don't like that. It was fine when I was growing up too, but it's not now.
Well, and I think
it's not
that right there.
Don't say that.
When I really examine the what do we need to do, how do we fail them, that's where, to me, we went wrong. It takes a village to raise a child, and there is no more village. A lot of times you have single mothers who were the children of single mothers, and now everybody's just busy surviving, and the kid is left alone with a device.
You have latchkey kids
to just kind of move around in the world and develop a moral compass on their, like, you think you're teaching them stuff, but like you say, there's not enough time in the day to really affect their moral center the way maybe our parents had. Because my mom, growing up, my mom didn't marry my pop till I was 11. So growing up, I was a latchkey kid and all that other stuff. But if I wasn't quote unquote a latchkey kid, I went to my grandparents' house, who my grandmother and grandfather were there and were able to put that discipline and structure around me. Whereas these kids don't necessarily have it was a comedian. He said, I think it was Chris Rock. He says, what are you, a mother at 16? What are you, a grandmother at 35? It's like, when your grandmother is still trying to go to the club, who, where is because, growing up, going to my grandmother's house, that was home for all of us. Hey, what's going on, podcasters? Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, carrying on Kansas City's tradition of great food and great jazz, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery, whiskey, gin, vodka. That is, oh so good. And friend of the podcast and panelist, Lane Boland, managing to keep the podcast going. Apparently wealthy or not. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
It was a safe place.
Yeah, and so my grandmother, my grandfather, and you had the entire familial center. And I think a lot of the kids, and it may not be generational, but I think a lot of these kids are having the issue of they don't have that structure. They don't have the extended structure. So if dad's either there or working two jobs, so he's never there anyway, and mom's doing the same thing, and then there's no extended structure, like your friends are raising you, and you're raising your friends, and then, like you say, arrogance and stupidity equal catastrophe if you leave those two alone long enough.
I'd be interested to know one thing about these four kids. Gwen Grant, president of the Urban League here in Kansas City, and I were talking one night, and she says, you have to understand one thing. There's many of these kids that get up to go to school that literally have to get themselves up to go to school. There's nobody there to tell them get up and go to school.
And they don't have anything to eat if there wasn't a meal program at church school.
Sometimes they come home and there's still nobody there.
Yeah.
And they're literally getting themselves up.
Well,
their chances to succeed
what we
in
call
this.
latchkey kids.
It's worse than that, though.
Their chances to succeed in
it's
this
kind of worse than the
are so slim to even graduate. Mm-hmm. It's a shocking thing. It really is.
So I'd like to look at this a little bit from like a stats perspective.
I was waiting on you to say that.
So there's a book that I've recommended before. It's a very dry read, but it gets you to think about things in a different way. It's called Fooled by Randomness.
What?
Fooled by Randomness.
Okay.
And the whole thought is...
That sounds like a mathematical book.
It is. They talk about like Warren Buffett quite a bit, but they're like saying, hey, there's this guy that had nothing and made billions of dollars just betting on. But mathematically, someone had to be able to do that. Like someone placing bets constantly out of the whole bell curve spectrum. Someone's going to be on that top end, just like someone's going to be on the bottom end. And it works that way with behavior too. I mean, it works that way with everything in life. There's always a distribution. Sometimes it's not the bell curve, but it's something similar to that. It has its own shape. But I think that in combination with what O'Connor said earlier, which is that there's so much more media, and so we hear about these things. And you add that with the fact there's 7 billion people, or getting closer to 8 billion people on this earth, that spectrum, that shape of the bell curve is the same, but there's a lot more people in it. So therefore that tail, the population of that tail goes up.
Yeah.
Just like every other piece. And as it goes up, we hear more and more about it in the media because there's more stories to tell.
Bad news sells.
And so, again, it's more like the stars align kind of thing, and that's what creates those tail ends. Like everything happened to happen in this way, and those tails exist because of it. It's rare that it could happen, but when there's 7 billion, 8 billion people on the earth, it happens a lot more often than you would think.
Yeah.
And it comes down to a probability like that. Maybe it was a single parent that had 3 generations that never talked, and that's what it ended up being.
Yeah.
And then that happened to all line up in one place with 4 or 5 other kids that were raised the same way, and then they came across this kid that was handicapped, and then everything fell in line. I mean, that's the tale. And then we're talking about it because the tales are the things that they want to report on.
Yeah.
Here's another interesting thought. You know, we're not a third world country, so when something like this happens to us, we find it much more shocking.
Oh, absolutely.
But you go to a third world country,
Yeah.
and this happens every day, all
Yeah.
the time, on mass scale.
Yeah, this is
Caste systems.
Yeah, this is
And
part of
everything you can think of.
Yeah.
You know, even genocide.
Yeah.
So why we are shocked, and we should be shocked because of who we are as Americans, that we try to hold ourselves to a higher esteem, that we hope we have a better morality than other people in the world. We're still America, and it's wonderful that we are shocked over something like this
Yeah.
compared to what other people in other worlds have to deal with, other lands.
I guess the only other thing I was thinking about the society thing is the negative part of it is I think it's just become exceptionally litigious. And to your point, I think that has been a major change in the way kids are raised, and that part will always, I think, be a huge problem going forward. I mean, I remember my dad absolutely signing a paper that said they could kick my ass anytime they wanted to at school if I got out of line. Well, you can't do that now. You get your ass handed.
You
to
can't
you.
even
private
yell
school.
at kids
Shut down.
anymore.
All right.
Which
I mean,
my kids went to private school.
And so, I mean, listen, I'm not in favor of corporal punishment all the time, but I think that there were very clear rules and things that he did, and they were willing to say, listen, I'm not with you for a full 40, 50, 60% of your day because you're gone.
Well, and
You
that,
know,
and that goes
so-
back to it takes a village, because when you're
I
not
agree.
there, somebody should be able to, within a
Discipline
certain
you.
extent,
They should too.
discipline.
But then when you always run into the problem when you get the asshole who disciplines your kid in the wrong way, or you didn't want them to do that, or it goes against your parenting beliefs and that kind of stuff, that's a major problem too. That's how we ended up where we are now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a tricky bag.
It is, but I think it goes even further, because when my kids were young, that's when they started teaching that, and I'm young, like kindergarten young. That's when they started teaching, that's when we started hearing about kids calling the cops on their parents because they were getting grounded,
Right.
or I got a spanking, and the parents were being arrested. I'm like, you can't.
But you know what that was born
When
out
was
of?
it? When was
That
it?
was born out of the fact that there was so much domestic abuse that was going on that they didn't.
But they
do
didn't
anything
teach
about.
it the right way. There's a difference between domestic abuse and discipline.
I'm not disagreeing. What I am saying is that there was enough domestic abuse going on that now, by law, if a domestic abuse call comes into a police station, somebody has to go to jail.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
They have to arrest someone.
But that's where once again a law was too broad based,
And my point, it was an
a
overreaction.
lot of our politicians may have good intention with the law, but they're bad about writing the law.
Yeah.
Intentions and how it gets applied is the problem.
Yeah. What did I say? But before we go to our last topic, what's that old saying? Is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Yeah.
I mean, if you think about most of the major gun crimes that happen in this country, they're already violating somewhere between 15 and 20 laws that are on the books. It's not that another law all of a sudden changes it and people go, oh, let's make it tougher. It's already there.
If you read what the gun laws are that are already on the book that they don't enforce, it's unbelievable. Just taking a gun across the state line, if it's an illegal gun, is a felony.
It's a felony.
Does anybody ever do anything about it? No. They don't
They
go
don't
after.
look at the right well, I guess that's the problem. What is the right person?
How
to
you
look
sell
for?
a gun.
You know,
Into-
and then you get into
You're into a civil rights problem.
These, and
like,
these things,
like
these
profiling me.
These
Yeah.
laws have teeth too. I mean, they have years in jail for doing different things. And I read an article where there was, I want to say 25 or 30 gun laws, and they started adding them up. By the time you got to the end, the dude's serving 1,000 years. But they don't enforce them. Because the politician always wants to go, look at me, I passed another gun law. How come you didn't enforce the first ones? Passing the other gun law doesn't help the situation. Enforce the existing laws and it'll take care of a lot of the problems.
I do think too, we just have a general disillusionment about institutions anymore, and maybe this could be considered a generational kind of thing. But I do believe that Americans in general, over the last 30 years, 40 years probably, since Nixon resigned, and probably started it, and then other things. Vietnam War probably honestly started it. Then other things beyond that, you just started losing faith in institutional ability to look after your kid in the right way. A lot of people lost faith in government. I think our government's done enough to be worthy of losing faith in. And I think you had, talking about Catholic stuff. I mean, all the sex abuse scandals that they've had.
Oh yeah.
It turns out, and I think they get a bad rap. There's about 2% of pedophile priests. Well, it turns out there's about 2% of pedophiles across the country.
Yeah.
So it's statistically,
the bell
it's
curve.
about the same. But when it's done by somebody that you put your faith in and your trust, and it's an institutional thing that then gets covered up and protected and all that stuff, you begin to have your faith shaken in an institution as a whole. And I mean, dude, I have family members who are priests who got caught up in that crap. You're one of the lowest forms of earth, and I would not want my kid around you in any way, shape, or form. And so you start to just go, okay, is it safer for me to just take my kid out of Catholic schools in general and put him somewhere else? Because I don't want my kid getting screwed. If I had a 10-year-old boy, what the hell you're being an altar boy? There's no chance. Get the hell out of there. Let's run.
And then how do you trust the village after that point?
And this is what I think is becoming a huge problem. It does take all of society in a weird way, and the people you interact with, to help shape your kid, because they do, whether it's for good, bad, or indifferent. They're already being shaped by them regardless, but it's just hard to trust. And so then you get the kind of stuff where you start setting up rules where you're like, no, you're not.
That should be a cornerstone or a foundation for your kid's upbringing, but their peer group they choose is still their biggest influence because of the time spent with them.
Sure.
And boundaries can help.
But a lot of times when you're kids, you're spending time with your friends in institutional places like a school or something along those lines. And so you would think that there's some oversight of some kind that's going on. I remember being a kid, like we'd sneak off all the time.
Well, and when did it change to have where both parents had, or in some cases there's only one, but when I was growing up, my mom didn't have to work. She was home. She was home when we went to school. She was home when we got home. It wasn't until I was probably in 6th or 7th grade before she had to get a job.
There's a mass exodus of women getting into the workforce when inflation went through the roof in the late 70s under the Carter administration, and you were paying 16% interest rates on your home all of a sudden and things along those lines. And then also, truly, I think there became a point, don't forget, there was the big national organization of women trying to pass a constitutional amendment for all these various things, that it got defeated eventually, but a lot of women did not want to be home. Get the hell out
well,
of the
and I
house.
say women because I'm a woman,
Well,
but there are some.
We have noticed
I'm glad it's noticeable. There are some men that choose to stay home, which is to me perfectly fine. If you can have one parent at home, it seems to make things a little better because you do have that parent-child interaction.
Stages.
Yeah.
Until they're 10. My mom didn't go back to school until I was 13. My sister was 11. I learned how to cook. I almost killed my father. because she was studying, but that learning how to cook ended up being a good thing because I'm a pretty good cook. I still like cooking. So,
Well, and that's the thing too.
but
like,
she didn't
you
have
just
to go
don't-
back to work. She wanted to go
Yeah.
back to work and became a school nurse. An RN.
I still think there's just traditional things that were traditions for 5,000 years because they worked. And my sister worked and her husband stayed home, and they're divorced now, so I will admit I always looked at him as just being a little bit lazy. He was shirking your, I guess, masculine responsibility, and that is a side of me that will never leave because I have that ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And before we go too deep on that subject, I literally just wrote that down. And we're going to talk about that on another podcast because that immediately gets a visceral response in me. Just hearing about guys staying home versus their wives.
But you know what? To
And
me-
I know that shouldn't be a thing. Because we're
It is.
in 2017. I know, like, I should be more masculinely evolved than that, and on so many levels I am. But on that
But you know
level,
what? That's fine for your family, for your household, if that's how you choose to do it. But it's not wrong for another family to say, I'm fine staying home and taking care of the children.
But I think he's saying, I don't want to judge you. I'm totally judging you.
yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to judge you.
I know where you're at.
Hey, I don't want to judge you, but I'm
And I can
so
understand where you're at.
judging
So
you.
basically, all the men here feel like the man should be the one out making the living.
No, I
and
want to
the
stay
women
home.
should be.
And I don't want to do
That's
that.
not what I think. I would
Totally.
love my wife to be as successful as humanly possible if I was married, and I think that would be great, and I would never begrudge her success.
No.
I do not understand mentally, and I think this is just, I believe biology, how a guy could just go, no, that's kind of good.
No, I'm
Just
good.
gonna hang
I'm-
out. Chill out.
But it is
Do this.
contributing. That I think that's where the issue is.
I think
you
men
are
and women
contributing
are
in
so
more.
different.
Hey, baby, I'm gonna have a lasagna when you get home. Like, I don't understand that. I
But
don't
you don't
understand
have any idea how nice that is for a woman that works
No,
to be able to
I
come
really do.
home
I do get
and
that.
not have her second job, as most women that work
I do
say.
get it. I
Nobody's
do
arguing
get it.
that
I
a
do
woman
get
should
it.
have to
This is going to be a great topic.
That's why I say
We should
I
get
don't
into
want to
this.
explore this now because
Because Michelle,
I want to be the first one.
Michelle's been retired now, and guess what? She waits on me more than she used to.
yeah.
And my wife's been retired for
We're
15
reverting.
years.
We're reverting back to that.
But do you get
I'm
home cooked
working, you're
meals
not.
or no?
More often now.
But here's the thing. I don't think it would be lasagna. If it were reversed, it'd be more like,
Chicken
out on the
nuggets.
grill and,
Grill something.
and barbecue.
It doesn't matter
Yeah.
as long, and it's probably going to be healthier, to be honest, because it's barbecued and not sauce to hell. But
You can do both. You can still do both. Let's
It's an
Slow down.
I don't expect dinner when I go home. Just because my wife, she was working too. And there was no expectation of that. It was just, as a dude, I'm like, I cannot not contribute.
and I can respect that. I
Yeah,
can
really, and
respect
that's
that.
really where I am. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I get that I'm wrong on this. I
And,
already
but you
know
know,
that in
but
advance.
it's
It
not
is
a
what
wrong
it
or a
is.
right. To
No, this-
me,
this
it's
is.
what works for your household. Truly.
Okay.
Because
okay.
you're
that's,
not.
That's what I mean.
under-
Is my impression
Yeah.
that it is wrong is wrong.
Let's cover this one next time.
That's-
Okay, we gotta move
we
on.
gotta go
and
through the
we gotta
Dom.
move on, and we will definitely bring this back as a topic on a later podcast. And we've got to get to the final shootings and beatings and briefings. Oh my! So, in front of the anonymous female, she has the statement that the Donald
my God.
made that after he got his briefing about the Russian hacking. Want to read that for us? if
The,
you don't
the
mind?
whole thing?
If
The
you
whole.
don't-
Just
if
give
you
us a
don't-
synopsis. Give us the Cliff Notes version.
Well, the middle paragraph
Everything
is
he
really
says
a
is
big
close
one.
friends.
I mean, basically, the first paragraph is, yeah, we had a good meeting, and I have tremendous respect for the intelligence community.
I'm going to pause you right there. That I haven't read it or heard anything on
Stop
this,
it
but
there.
that right there sounds like hey, this is really nice, but here's what we're talking
Right,
about.
but
Just
The middle paragraph, though, while Russia, China, and other countries, outside groups, and people and people are consistently trying to break through the cyber infrastructure of our governmental institutions, businesses, and organizations, including the Democratic National Committee. There was absolutely no effect on the outcome of the election, including the fact that there was no tampering whatsoever with voting machines. There were attempts to hack the Republican National Committee, but the RNC had strong hacking defenses and the hackers were unsuccessful.
There's some truth in that.
So no.
Oh, yes.
Whether some truth, yes. Whether it is our government, organizations, associations, or businesses, we need to aggressively combat and stop cyber attacks. I will appoint a team to give me a plan within 90 days of taking office. The methods, tools, and tactics we use will keep America safe. Should not be a public discussion that will benefit those who seek to do us harm. 2 weeks from today, I will take the oath of office, and America's safety and security will be my number one priority. Puke.
There's a few things in there I agree with, I will say.
I would agree.
So, there's
Is one of them, we don't need to know every single thing that our government does to keep us safe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that I don't want to know how you keep me safe.
I just want to feel safe.
Yeah.
I just want to feel safe.
I don't feel like I
If you're-
need to know
if you-
every single thing the government,
Well, and if
as
you did,
far as that's
sure, I
concerned,
agree.
is doing. Because all you're doing is telling people, I mean, other countries listen to our news broadcasts.
Sure.
They listen to
our
our
24/7.
documentaries. They listen, I mean, what
their
was that
job.
show that was on that was talking about the military weapons? And I'm like, why is this even a show?
Was it just future
Well,
weapons?
what you got to remember.
Yes.
Yeah,
Somehow,
I
and I'm
remember
like,
that.
why is this even
But
a
you got to
thing?
remember
It's already
the stuff. It's already
It doesn't
debriefed.
matter though. I'm like,
50 years old.
it may be debriefed, but you still don't need to put it on TV.
Wait. Let's get down to one basic factor. And I do not know if it would have made a difference. I can tell you what the State Department's cyber systems for against hacking would be. If she would have kept her server at the State Department.
They're not even talking about that.
Well,
though.
no,
They're
no,
talking
no,
about
no, no,
a
no.
server that was used by the
WikiLeaks,
national.
WikiLeaks got through to her server, got through to Podesta's server because Podesta did it when it bought into a phishing scheme and gave them everything they wanted. That's a fact. These are facts. This is reality, and it has to be dealt with in a real situation. The DNC may not have had, obviously, maybe Podesta gave them the phishing to get into the DNC. I don't know what happened. They had a lot of people screwed up that allowed these people to get into their systems. And I don't care how you want to spin it or how you want to look at it. The bottom line is these people did some really stupid shit. And they exposed themselves to getting hacked. And all that information came. Did it affect things? Well, yeah. But you were the stupid SOB that let it happen.
I'm surprised.
Just saying.
I'm surprised that he didn't say Russia had nothing to do with it again.
Listen, I
because
didn't-
up until that point, up until the point of him getting the briefing, it was absolutely not Russia. Now there's no mention of that.
I think what he said
Well, actually, he
earlier
did
was
mention it.
it's very hard to
Today.
track down these things.
Today.
Exactly.
He knew it was Russia, but it can anymore. You can mask where you're coming from. It could have been China. It could have been anybody. Out of the 17
Could have been some
bureaus
guy
that
in New Zealand.
investigated this, 3 signed off and said it was Russia for sure. And then the argument becomes, okay, so yes, Russia hacked a couple of systems. Did it actually influence the election? Because if you look at the election results and where she lost, I don't think anybody was worried about whether or not she was sitting
there was no election
using-
machine.
I don't
think
know
she
how
lost
many.
because she did not take advantage of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and had paid no attention, assuming that they were a lock for the Democratic candidate, and it was actually the outlying manufacturers that
And the media played right into
kicked
it.
her ever-loving ass.
And she was really a
Yeah.
bad
And
candidate.
she
I'm
did
sorry.
a
She
bad
was
campaign.
bad candidate before. She's still a bad candidate, and if she runs for anything else, she will still be a
Listen,
bad
I like her, and she got my votes. You already know that. But I think she ran a very piss-poor campaign, and I think Bill Clinton was the first one to call it out and said, this is a bad campaign strategy. You need to be spending time in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania and lock those up, because if you don't win those,
I think it was a perfect storm of bad. The media could not report enough on Donald Trump and his stupidity during the Republican debates, and it just moved on into the presidential,
So who ended up being the brilliant on it?
and how aren't we hearing
that doesn't make it okay, though.
Why aren't we hearing stories trashing the media right and left for?
They are talking about that. They are talking about media reform and blah, 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 blah.
Again, I'm a Democrat and I vote Democratic all the time, but I vote independent, probably even more than that. What I do find slightly offensive about this election is every time you hear a story about Donald Trump and the upcoming inauguration, there's always the disclaimer of whether or not you liked it, whether you voted for him or not, whether you agree with him in any way on the results, blah, blah, blah. Then that's always the initial disclaimer. That's never happened before.
Well, there's also 50,
except for Bush.
Half the people voted.
Yeah.
I mean, so like.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of get it.
I think
people are still stirred up, right?
Well, I think
But
telling people,
do
though.
you ever remember a giant disclaimer that comes out before every single time they talk about the president-elect? I mean, nobody did that to Obama. Nobody.
Well, and
nobody
they-
did that.
so
Period.
you
I
missed,
don't remember them doing
because
that
you
with Bush
didn't.
either.
Because
we were all so give
we
him a
were
shot.
talking.
The first time because of the way the election went down.
You think the
Absolutely.
election went.
So my
So
question for
we-
you is, why do you feel they're doing that? Like, why? Why do you
Because
think
I
they're
think
doing
everybody thinks Trump's an idiot, and for some reason he has stirred up a massive amount of people who are freaked out by what he's going to do, and he brings it on himself by tweeting stupid shit out all
Well,
the
and
time.
they've
That's
started getting
impossible.
Republicans that voted for him that are concerned now about,
Yeah.
and it just, but the thing is, America made its bed. They're gonna lie in it. It's gonna happen. I don't agree with
the
it.
office.
But my thing
Yeah.
is, and that's true. I had a conversation with a girl I work with, and she said, whether you like him or not, he is the president. And
Once again, a disclaimer just to begin a conversation.
no, it was the
happens
middle. It was the
constantly.
middle of a conversation. It doesn't matter what we were talking about before that.
But I heard before you guys comment.
So we were talking about it, and in her opinion, she's like, I don't like him. I don't like anything about him. But he is now the president, and I don't feel like she said the same thing. I didn't like Obama, but he was our president, and I don't think it's okay to say bad things about
I think
the
it's
president.
fine for her to have that in her opinion,
Yeah.
and that's great, and I can see how that can come up in a conversation. I've had a million of those conversations. What I'm blown away with is the assumption by every television program that I've seen, every radio show that I've ever listened to, that everybody feels that way. And that's
Yeah.
why they all start with a disclaimer. And
I'm a little tired
I
of
know
you
you're
got
probably
you need to get over it and move on. I mean, you can kind of people I think kind of feel similar to the way you feel when somebody dies. You don't tell somebody that's grieving or upset that they need to get over it. You need to let that whole process happen. And they're not, because he's not. Because he keeps doing stupid shit and he keeps people stirred up.
I would guess that people on that side are concerned that I don't think they're thinking of it as a grieving process. I think they're concerned that they will never get over it, and it'll just be
I
a
think
divide.
I think they're.
Whoever they are.
Let's put it this way:
Yeah,
after
whoever
Obama
they
got
are,
elected,
those
who I didn't
people.
vote for, I called up one of my best black friends and said, "I'm proud of my country today. We did something outstanding. I hope that and I will support that he will do well until he gives me a reason not to support him."
Sure. Yeah.
And I heard most of my conservative friends that didn't vote for him. I didn't hear any of them, not a one of them, going, "Oh God, we're in trouble now."
Well,
It's kind of like, we're heading in a different direction. There'll be more,
No, that's
more
more than harm,
socialist
I think.
issues that we're going to deal with
okay.
and things like this. Well, I know a lot of people, and now
Yeah.
they are educated people. We are business people, and we speak with a little bit clearer mind than the ignorant. I shouldn't call them ignorant, but some of the other people who aren't as enlightening and pay attention to things and understand the real way of the world. Those people, and we have one, a very good friend of ours. Their world is so narrow. How can they have a reasonable opinion?
Perspective.
They only receive this little bit of information. All right, they don't receive general information out there. I have never seen people absolutely freaked out over this shit. And it's kind of like, really? Really? We're not going to have nuclear war on the 21st of January. I can promise you that. There are going to be cooler heads prevail. And I think the country owes the chance for a very different person, a very different personality, to see what he does with the country. What if he succeeds? How are people going to deal with that? They're going, the world's going to end tomorrow.
The
sky is falling.
I think the problem that you're seeing,
It might happen.
I think it's a legitimate problem. I think most of the time when you lose an election, it's between two politicians who are reasonably level-headed, who you might disagree with the
didn't have that
policy.
this time.
But you don't think they're crazy. You don't.
wonder if both of them are
they're
crazy
not
now.
freaking wild cards. Like
You're right. I'll give you that.
They've at least laid out a plan that's coherent, consistent, and just has a different worldview. He's just fucking bananas who just says whatever he wants and brags in a presidential debate about beating Rosie O'Donnell in a Twitter war. I'm like, dude, this is where you freak people out. This is where
I will say this: I do believe, and you may disagree with me, but I do believe, had Hillary won, we would hear this same stuff on the other side. I really do, because of the lock her ups and all of the other
That they're still saying.
all of the other vehement things that we were hearing from the other side. But the problem with Trump is singular in that, and to Chris's point, I think even a vast majority of the people who voted for Trump think that there's a high probability that on some level he is a nutbag. Even the people who voted for him. So
we're holding our breath a little bit.
So the people on the other side who absolutely didn't vote for Trump are like, how in the fuck did we elect a nutbag? And so people are afraid because they're like, hey, wait a minute. One, and I don't even necessarily think it's about Trump as you want the country to succeed. And you're not in most elections, like you say, you have two politicians that
Represent two different ideas.
but you generally agree that these are smart, competent people. When they get in office, they'll work it out. I didn't vote for the sumbitch, but that's usually kind of the sentiment. I didn't vote for that sumbitch, but.
Well, and the change that they generally propose is fairly bland and small steps.
Yeah, but
It's the worst of the best too.
yeah. But now what you have with and once again, I do hope he succeeds because I hope every president
You always
succeeds.
want the country to do well. That's as an American. If you don't want the country to do well, I suggest you move.
Yeah, my issue isn't that I don't want him to do well, because I definitely do. I don't think most people see the path. Like most people can go, well, okay, I didn't vote for that guy, but in the case of Obama, he was the president of the Harvard Law Review. Like he's a smart man. He'll find the path that maybe won't lead us where I think we should go, but I don't think he's going to drive the car off the cliff. It just seems like with Donald, he's willing to drive the car off the cliff, and that's scary. Look, if you got 3 billion people as passengers, they're a little afraid of going off the cliff with you.
Well, DJ and I drove a car off a cliff one time, and we're both my wife will testify to this.
So, this will probably shock you. I'm a hardcore right-wing conservative.
Okay.
But I voted independent this year. First year ever. And
Okay.
38 years of voting.
You got to vote.
I voted.
No, I'm saying you got to vote.
But
Yes.
I think we lose faith in the American system, and we also want to blame the candidate versus the process that got him there. Because
Right.
to survive that process, whether you're Hillary or Trump, it's a wacko process. I mean, you got to be either an egomaniac, megalomaniac, or
Wait a
power
second.
hungry.
I'm running in 2020 on the Socialist Conservative platform.
I know you,
I'm
Dave.
none of those
I know you,
things
Dave.
yet.
I know you, Dave.
Yet.
An egomaniac, a megalomaniac, or what now? or a Dave
power
Elliott?
hungry, or power hungry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Whichever has the best chance of winning.
So
I have a great
I think-
platform is all I got.
I think what we also do is we tend to we all want a leader, right?
Yeah.
We want direction and we want clear direction, but we also overemphasize the true power they have. Other than the who they're going to appoint
Yeah.
for the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That's the biggest, longest lasting influence because of the appointment for life.
Yeah.
But they can't even do that on their own.
I know. So you see what I'm getting at. So other than who they appoint, which then has to be approved, right?
Yeah.
And then there are good counselors.
Yeah.
There's cabinet members. There's joint chiefs of staff.
And
seasoned military people.
in which we're seeing some of his cabinet appointments, and let me tell you, some of them I'm like, okay, and some of them I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Well, and
Yeah.
I think that's a big concern I have because they were talking about it on the news today. They're in such a hurry to get his cabinet approved that they're going through
the confirmations without finishing the vetting process.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm
which
like,
is-
that to me is not okay.
That happens though
I
all
also
the time.
think if you
But it's
talk-
all of them.
If you talk constitutionally, I would agree with you that the president is supposed to have a limited role. But I think the rise of the power of the executive order over the past 30 years has made it so that the
Judicial,
president actually
congressional.
wields a lot more power now than they were ever supposed to have.
Yep.
And that,
But
I think
that's
there's
also
more
the one.
influence.
That's also a thing that the next president can get rid of. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, you can
you
wipe
know,
them out
I mean,
and just
so
take 'em-
what?
take 'em all
You have
away.
up to 8 years, and then it's gonna,
I
you
mean,
know.
Obama wiped out almost all of Bush's executive orders. I mean, that was the first thing he did, which I don't blame him. They're not really law technically, but
Well, here's an interesting concept as the confirmations get going. Harry Reid really, pardon my, he fucked up because he threw the nuclear option out there, and now you can pass a Supreme Court justice with 51 votes. It does no longer take 60, and that was so foolish.
Yeah, that was
On
foolish.
his part to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
It should be 60.
Well,
but,
see,
but let
yeah.
me tell you, they will throw that back at him so hard.
Well,
The
absolutely.
Democrats are going to sit there and go, "Oh my
but
God,
if
what
you're
do we do?"
if you're a strict
Yeah.
constitutionalist,
Yes, they will.
actually, if
Be
you
careful
really
what you
read
shit.
the Constitution, the Senate only has the ability to advise and consent, which they interpret as approval.
Yes.
Which is not ever what it was designed to be.
be.
It was designed to be advise and consent.
Right.
So if you really wanted to go back to the roots of it, you could go back to that.
Yes.
And he very, very well may. Who knows?
Well, I will say this about before we close today's show. You know, this like I said, this was an interesting week that got me really, thinking about the direction of our country and the direction of our youth, the direction of our electorate, and all I can say is I really do pray that if the incoming president is taking us in a very wrong direction, that people will do their civic duty in the next election. Get out there and vote. Don't show up the day after and protest because
Well, you didn't participate.
because
You
you
need to
lost
do
and
your-
you didn't participate.
Your civic duty in all elections,
Yeah,
not just
no,
the
absolutely.
presidential.
Local.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, your local elections in particular. I mean, those affect your daily life.
Jury duty.
Yeah, absolutely. Do your duty. I mean, the cost of freedom is not free. we live in this nation, and the price of admission is action. We have to participate, and if you're not out there actually participating in the elections, whether it's local or state or federal, but like I say, you go and you protest after the fact. Why? Your protest should have been in the voting booth.
You have nothing to say.
So, with that, I'm hoping that next week is slightly less tragic than this week. But in the meantime, we're going to end this broadcast in the way we end all of our shows, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.